My stepmom gave away my PS4 while I was away at college. So I rented out her house while she was on her honeymoon with her newest husband. My mother died from cancer 5 years ago, when she was only 55. It destroyed my dad. They'd been together since college and were the same age, with my dad being 1 month older. I was 22 years old and about to graduate from college with a degree in chemistry when the main events began. I went to college on a full-ride scholarship. This will be important later. My dad met my now stepmother while she was working as a nurse at the hospital where my mom was dying. My stepmother, Grace, hit all the right notes to earn my dad's trust. She was empathetic, nurturing, and comforting after my mother passed away. I was 17 and old enough to realize she was just trying to get my dad's assets, but it was up to him whether he wanted to be in a relationship with her. I was in my final year of school and had just been awarded a scholarship to attend university outside of the country the following year. My dad mourned my mom for a year, and Grace would call him every month or so, in my opinion, to see if she could get her hooks into him. After a year, Grace took off the gloves and went after my dad. Grace was only 40 years old when she and my dad started dating. I didn't like her, but at the same time, my dad didn't seem as depressed as he was before. So I tried to be less negative about her and give her a chance. But deep down, I didn't trust her. We are Swedes, and at least in my family, the son does not tell his dad what to do or even give an opinion. Grace is from the Czech Republic, in case you're wondering. Throughout his career, my dad was a successful banker who managed to amass a large fortune. I won't go into detail, but Grace and my father got married after 6 months of dating. My father, on the other hand, never fully recovered from my mother's death, and despite being only 57 years old, he was becoming increasingly weak. Since his health was rapidly declining, he brought me in and asked me directly, "Boy, what do you need to set you up in this life?" I told him I didn't need anything because I'm a man and can take care of myself. "But what are you talking about, Dad? You'll be around for decades." I reminded him that he has living sisters with kids, my aunts and cousins. I also reminded him that I had a full college scholarship, so he didn't need to give me any money. He was dead only a year later, at 59. I've seen a lot of Hollywood movies, so I've considered the conspiracy theory that my father's nurse wife poisoned him and forced him to sign over all of his money to her, but I honestly don't believe that happened. Other family members didn't like Grace either, but they knew my father was madly in love with my mother and that her death had completely broken him. Long story short, my father handed down his 5-bedroom house to me, despite the fact that I had not asked for it or expected it. He gave a small inheritance to each of his sisters and their children. He left Grace approximately 80% of all his existing money, which amounted to a few $100,000. My father ignored me because he was overly generous, but he still gave me a few tens of thousands of dollars, which were obviously extremely beneficial to me. Grace tried to be friendly, but I could tell she was furious that she didn't get my father's house. That was mine, and I had the documents to prove it. She was extremely upset because we live in an extremely upmarket and trendy area where homes are rare, expensive, and easily sold for a huge profit. During the first few months after my father's death, I had the disgusting, creepy experience of knowing Grace was trying to feel me out to see if I might be interested in her. Gross. She stayed in the house, however, because she got used to living there and acting as if she owned it over the last 3 years. And, regardless of the fact that I actually owned it, I was always away at college and only visited my father's old house every couple of months, or to see my cousins who lived just miles away, not Grace. I downplayed the fact that it was my house, and I believe Grace eventually forgot that she had no legal right over it. She obviously believed that sooner or later, because I never asked her for any of my father's cash, which she inherited, I was independently wealthy and would simply give up my home to her. Then, when she started dating a new guy only a few months after my dad passed, I returned home from college after graduating, and she and a new boyfriend, a sleazy-looking D-bag named Gary, who was a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house and that they owned it. I played along. Grace told me she gave away my PS4 to Gary's cousin because I am too old to play video games. I don't even know this guy, and you give him my PS4, giving it away to someone else I don't know? I smiled, but I knew what I needed to do eventually. I immediately changed all of my network passwords. She also stated that she and Gary were getting married because I can't keep mourning your father forever. I need to move on with my life. I told her that I just graduated from college, have already secured a job with a local company, and will soon find a new place to live. She seemed thrilled, especially the part where I said I would soon have a new place to live. Then she told me in a patronizing way, "You always have a place in our house. You are welcome to stay in our place at any time." Thanks, Grace. That is really generous of you. What I actually said is that I might have a new place in 3 months. She said that's awesome because she plans to travel to her native country to marry Gary and then go on her honeymoon. She told me that it was a local event and that otherwise I would invite you, honey. Anyway, I know you're quite busy. I congratulated her. She wanted me to babysit the house for her. How do I keep an eye on my own house? Sure. Of course, I will take care of the house. I'm careful not to say, your house. She and her D-bag fiancé, who I'm sure is only there for Grace's money, left, and I immediately put it up for rent. I hired some people to pack up Grace's furniture and her personal stuff and store them in a storage unit. I have all of my parents' furniture that they had before my father met Grace. Locks were changed. All of them. Within days, I received many inquiries about my amazing, furnished house with breathtaking views. I rented it to a lovely young family. A lawyer and his wife, a schoolteacher, have 2 young teenage kids. They paid me their first and last month's rent and signed a 1-year lease. I warned them about my crazy stepmother, who believes this is her home, but I also provided them with contact information for my lawyer, the same lawyer my father hired, in case they need any guarantee that I'm on the level. I also provided my lawyer with information about the storage unit, including the fact that I generously paid for 4 months of storage in advance, which is a whole month more than Grace's check honeymoon. I then found a great apartment near my new office. After a hard day at work, I met a woman at a restaurant I visit regularly. After 6 months of dating, we are engaged and will soon be married. Grace, of course, started screaming and causing a lot of trouble when she realized she had been kicked out of my house, but my lawyer quickly shut her down, saving me from ever having to speak to her again. According to what I've heard, she and her trash husband fled the country, and I'm guessing they're spending a lot of my dad's money and will soon be bankrupt, as people like them usually do when they get a taste of what they believe is the good life. So maybe Grace will go and try to manipulate another lonely man into giving her his money. Speaking of money, the house I rent out is bringing in so much that I moved into a larger apartment with my fiancé in addition to being able to assist with my cousin's college expenses. I enjoy my job, but I could live entirely on renting my father's old house. And to think, if Grace had been a better sport, I might have let her stay at the house. And definitely if she stayed away from my room. But no, she had to act completely proprietary, so I had to make her homeless as a wedding gift. P.S. I bought another PS4, despite the fact that I had barely used my previous one. It did not matter. It wasn't Grace's to give away. You do not give away other people's stuff. You give away your own stuff. Which is why I decided to kick Grace out of my house. Because it is mine, and I get to decide who stays there.